All right, good evening, everyone. As we begin the meeting, I will ask everyone, please silence cell phones and other electronic devices. It is 5 p.m. I'll call this council planning meeting to order. We respectfully acknowledge that the municipality of Brighton is located on the traditional territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabe. This land is governed by the Williams Treaties of 1923, which include the Mississauga nations of Alderville, Curve Lake, Hiawatha, and Scugog Island. We recognize that the Mississauga nations are the collective stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters in perpetuity, and that the 2018 Williams Treaty Settlement Agreement formally invited a renewal of the treaty relationship and reaffirmed the rights of the Mississauga peoples to harvest, hunt, and fish on these lands. The Council of the Municipality of Brighton commits to honoring this responsibility by working in the spirit of reconciliation to ensure the health and integrity of these lands for generation to come. I have a motion moved by Councillor McCausland, seconded by Councillor Deputy Mayor Anderson, that Council approve the May 11th, 2026 planning meeting agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. I will note that Councillor Wheeldon is joining us virtually this evening. Thank you. And that Councillor Rowley has joined us in the chamber as well shortly after calling the meeting to order. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? And if so, please state the general nature thereof. There are none noted. That brings us to our closed session meeting. Should council proceed into closed session, we'll give staff a moment to transition to the closed session. I have a motion moved by Councillor McCausland, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council resolve into closed session May 11th, 2026 at 5:02 p.m. in accordance with subsection 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001 to discuss matters pertaining to C. Two separate discussions respecting a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board pursuant to subsection 239(2)C of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended for the purposes of receiving advice and being advised by counsel, and F. Advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose pursuant to subsection 239(2)F, respecting the outcome of a judicial pretrial. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. And we'll just give staff a moment to transition to the closed session. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. Municipality of Brighton takes steps beyond the requirements of the Planning Act to engage the community in land use planning initiatives. The municipality also holds a statutory public meeting on the planning item and then receives a staff report with a recommendation on which council will make a decision. It is during this meeting that council depends on the community to provide input for our decision. This input may be received in advance of the statutory public meeting by sending correspondence to the clerk's office and or by making an oral submission to council at the statutory public meeting. This will best inform council on the land use planning matter prior to council making our final decision. The province's regulations now limit appeal rights to only the applicant and specified regulated persons. For details or information on the new appeal process, please visit the municipal website or contact the clerk's office. So we have one item in our statutory public meeting this evening, correct? Yes. Is with regard to 114B Ontario Street. It's an amendment to the draft plan approvals, file sub 02-2022 and zoning bylaw amendment applications at 11-2025. The applicant is Westgate Brighton Developments, Inc. The purpose of the public meeting is to address requirements under the Planning Act for hosting a public meeting before council makes a decision and to obtain public input towards making any decision on the proposed application. So, Mr. Warren, by what method and on what date was notice of the application given?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the notice of the subject applications was provided in compliance with notice requirements under the Planning Act, and a public notice sign was placed on the property on the 20th of April, 2026, and the notice of the meeting was also mailed to homeowners within 120 meters of the subject lands, as well as applicable agencies, also on April the 20th.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. And would you please explain the purpose and reason for the subject applications before council this evening?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor. I don't want to steal any thunder from the proponent's planner who is here tonight to provide a short presentation, but I will say that the subject lands, essentially known as the Westgate draft plan of subdivision, received planning approval in July of 2024. The lands were subsequently sold to Stalwood Homes, which is the proponent now, who want to revise the approved plan to include a more flexible zoning to allow for different housing forms to meet the current market demand without necessarily coming back to council for additional approvals, as they are needed. The submitted zoning bylaw amendment will support the change in unit mix, but no change to the principle of development or fundamental lot fabric is really proposed.
Thank you for that. So normally I would move to ask if there are persons present who have questions or comments, but I think I'll ask the proponent to provide your slide deck for us and your presentation, and then we'll ask folks if they have any questions or comments. I'll ask you to introduce yourself for the record.
All right, there we go. So my name is Mark Tao. I'm a registered professional planner with the Boulevard Group, so acting for Stallwood Homes on these applications. So I do have a presentation, which thank you to the clerk for bringing it up. So I'll try to move. Thank you. So as was stated, this is an application. There are two applications. One is to amend the existing draft plan of subdivision approval from 2024, and then also part of that means amending the zoning that was put in place for those subdivision lots as well. So I'll just move through it quite quickly if I can, and we'll see if there's any questions following. So the revisions really are around just adjusting what was approved previously in terms of a mix of singles, semis, and some townhouses, and generally allowing for a bit greater mix of unit types, but mostly allowing for more townhouses as well as townhouses with additional residential units and or kind of stacked dwelling houses. So essentially providing for more units and more, I'd say generally more affordable units as well within development. And also just adjusting the zoning along with that, and a correction update to the environmental protection area on site. So next slide, please. Thanks. So those you're aware, it's on the west side of Ontario Street, south of CN Main Line, south of kind of downtown. Currently or historically, the lands were used predominantly for agricultural uses. There is an existing dwelling on the property as well. And so it's really what you see on the screen. It's the east half or the right half of that kind of offset red rectangle is the lands. So next slide, please. So the lands for the subdivision are about 5.5 hectares or 13.5 acres. They have direct access and frontage on Ontario Street. So the road access would be from there. As noted, there's an existing house on the property. There's a creek. That's kind of that treed area that goes through the the eastern third of the site. And there's a house on that side of the creek. And then the western half of the property is intended to be used for predominantly the subdivision. Next slide, please. So just a table summarizing what was in the approved draft plan in terms of the unit mix and the total number of units. And then the right-hand column in the table shows what's proposed. So a greater proportion of singles, but then also a greater number of row houses. So the lots are generally getting changed around in terms of the type of units that are being proposed, and then resulting in overall increase in the number of units across the subdivision. So on the pictures here, these are just representative images provided by Stalwood of kind of single detached and semi-detached buildings that they've built in other comparable developments. And then the next slide will show townhouse types, and then on the left, upper left, and then the bottom right is what would be a stacked townhouse or a townhouse with like an accessory dwelling unit or additional residential unit on the lower level. Next slide, please. So this graphic probably is a picture, tells or says 1,000 words. So this is essentially a colored kind of overlay of the subdivision. So the road layout is exactly the same as it was approved in 2024. Essentially, just what is happening is moving kind of the different types of units around within the subdivision lands themselves. So mostly just changing where certain units are and which type. It is going to be a phase subdivision, so 2 phases. So part of it is about providing for the right type and mix of each phase. And so the red coloring is really where you're seeing the changes to the unit types. So it's fairly self-explanatory labels, but just moving and changing some of the mix across the subdivision. And then the green and the yellow, those are where the things aren't changing from what was previously proposed or approved. So we'll move to the next slide. We can. All right. So the next several slides are really just looking at the provincial policy statement, the county and Brighton's official plan, and then to the zoning bylaw. So in the interest of time, I'll move through them quite quickly, but we did review the applications against the PPS and found that it satisfied the policy direction of the PPS. And the next slide, the county official plan, the eastern half of the lands in which the subdivision lies are within the existing urban area under the current county official plan. So permits residential subdivisions as is previously approved and continues to be proposed. And then next slide, moving down, again, number of policies at the county level that would apply, but essentially being within the urban area satisfies the key policies of the OP and supports providing a range of density types within the built-up area of the town. The next slide, please. So the previous approvals did include an amendment to the Brighton official plan, and that was really to move the lands out of the greenfield designation into a residential designation. There's no official plan amendment needed for the current applications. As I said, we're working within the previously approved development envelope in terms of where the developable area is. There continues to be a water course that traverses kind of north-south through the eastern third of the property. And then there's a coastal wetland to the south. And so those continue to be identified and protected as part of the updated subdivision. And next slide, please. So under the residential designation for the lands, a number of policies apply. And the application, as I say, continues to satisfy those policies of the official plan in terms of land use and use of existing roads and services, protection of natural heritage areas, and provision of a range of housing types that support the growth targets for the municipality. And next slide, please. So the zoning, so we do need a zoning amendment because the way the zoning is set up, there's essentially one zone that would be applied to the property that deals with singles and semi-detached dwellings, and a second zone that's a bit higher density, call it medium density, that's for the townhouses. So because we're moving the different types of units around within the development, according to phasing, we also have to adjust where some of the zone boundaries fall. So for the most part, we're moving those zone boundaries around to line up with the single, semis, and townhouses and the stacked towns, and also adjusting some of the performance standards. So things like minimum yards, setbacks, those kinds of things to reflect the lot fabric and the building types that are proposed. So for the most part, it will, or for the lands, they'll stay in either an R2-47 zone or an R4-6 exception zone, just recognizing the site-specific performance standards, then an environmental protection zone that aligns with the creek corridor. And then there is an open space exception zone that was previously applied for a setback to a wetland, and that's going to be removed because the wetland boundary, based on more current information, is not encroaching. I guess the setback from the wetland boundary doesn't fall where it was previously identified to be. So the proposal is to change that, but then also add a bit of a wetland buffer associated with the creek corridor to reflect updated information about where the wetland is in that area. So the next three slides we'll just kind of move through fairly quickly. So a number of site-specific provisions. So there was previously site-specific zoning put in place with different standards. We're adjusting those again to reflect Stalwood Homes types of units that they build. So looking at changing a number of provisions or readjusting the provisions. Some of them are already previously changed for the first set of applications. So we're changing those further or differently again as part of these applications. And then, so that's for the R2-47. So this is for the singles and semis. And then the next two slides, we can just kind of go through those. This is for the medium density, what I'll call the medium density zone for the row houses. And then the row houses with the additional residential units, accessory units, and for stacked row houses. And so again, making changes to the existing site-specific zoning to reflect the types of units and buildings being proposed. So then the next slide, this just shows essentially a sample layout of the three key types of lots. So on the left-hand side, this is block 1 within the subdivision. This would be either a standard townhouse or a townhouse plus additional residential units in it. So as you can see, pretty typical setbacks and layouts in terms of standard front yard with ability for a full parking space in the front and driveway. And then rear yards are proposed to be minimum of 6 meters and allow for a deck to encroach or to be located in the rear yard with a depth of about 3 meters. So essentially a minimum 20-foot rear yard with a 10-foot deck. And then on lot 2 and lot 3, there's single detached dwellings. So it shows two different unit types. The lot 2 is a bit smaller and lot 3 is a larger single. And then lot 4 or 5 is a semi-detached building type. So again, nothing that's kind of out of character or out of sync with what Brighton typically sees in kind of the more modern subdivision layouts in terms of lot sizes, setbacks, frontages, just adjusting for Stalwood's typical range of building products. So just reflecting that proposal as part of this. So in conclusion, on the last slide, feel the applications are consistent with the PPS, conform to the county and Brighton's official plan, and constitute good land use planning. So happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Mr. Tao. Actually, I'm going to ask if there are persons present in the gallery who have questions, and then I'll go to council afterward. Are there persons present who have questions or comments with regard to the proposed amendments? Give the silver button another push there.
Okay,
And Mrs. Richardson, I know you're going to introduce yourself because you're used to that, but you also have to write your name down on the sheet in front of you there.
okay, I'll
Okay.
do that after and put
Yeah,
it back there. First of all, something that was brought up before, and I think Mr. Warren could remember this. If this is approved, is there any way that in the agreement that we could have a dedicated truck route? What was suggested was that they go down when they're coming from Trenton or when they're coming to gravel, that they continue down Cedar onto to Ontario Street. Ontario Street has been inundated with dump trucks, heavy equipment for almost 10 years. And we now speed things in the roads, which is working. They are having to slow down. But I think school buses and all the kids, I would really like the town to consider, council to consider a dedicated truck route. The other thing is I'm definitely opposed to this cash. I drove down that subdivision is like a little town. There's so many kids, and I think it's time that the council rejected cash in lieu of Parkland and started land and some playgrounds in these large subdivisions like some of the subdivisions are doing. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Are there any other persons present who have questions or comments with regard to the proposed amendments? It was already on, ma'am. There you
Okay.
go.
I'm Deborah Sherwood. We own the property just north of where this is being developed. And I was wondering the makeup of the different units that were bordering on our land. I didn't know whether are you flipping where those are? So you're putting all the townhouses there?
You can answer that, so I'll leave it to you to do so.
Maybe just visually, maybe this is easier to see, so.
Yeah,
So
because I couldn't see it up
yeah,
there.
no, I appreciate it. So this over here, so I'm not sure if you're over there, these are all, well,
That's it.
you're over there, okay, yeah, so predominantly, previously there were singles there and
Yeah.
they're proposing now semi-detached on the stretch.
Okay, semi, so there's twice as many people. Uh-huh, okay.
To this one.
Um, This doesn't work very well. Um, Okay. So it's not the townhouses going there, it's the semis.
Yes, yeah.
And the fence is still going to be there, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
Happy, happy to chat or two.
Okay, thank you both for that. Are there any other persons present who have questions or comments with regard to the proposed amendments?
Hi there. I am just online, so I'm trying to.
Thank you, Ms. Spagnola. I'll come to you next.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Deb.
Hi there, Debbie Perry. Is it on?
It is.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Mayor, Council, I just have not necessarily about the development. My question is driving along Ontario Street now with the detours, the traffic along there is horrendous right now. And my big concern is where it hits Main Street. We need to do something about that intersection. Traffic lights, especially with the new development coming in, that is a lethal corner for anybody these days. So I'm wondering if that's something that's going to be considered as part of this.
Staff are working on a proposal to bring to council.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's do this.
Ms. Spagnola.
Hi there.
Go ahead, we can hear you.
I am living in 114A, so I'm right in the middle of all the construction. And I'm just curious, it looks like behind our house, so the south side is now going to be 2 townhomes very, very close to our property, and I just wanted to confirm that.
Mr. Tao?
Thank you for the question. So if you're understanding, if you're on the north side of the new road fronting on Ontario Street, to the west of you, so behind you, it would still just be the existing single detached dwelling that's on the property right now, owned by the previous owner, Mr. Wallace. That's still intended to be that just a big single block where the existing house would be relocated to. So it would remain as a single detached lot. Kind of the whole space between the creek and your rear yard would be like a large lot single, essentially. So that answers the question.
Sorry, it says like it's stacked townhomes behind my lot.
Okay, so are you to the south of the access road then?
Yeah, like I'm literally the only house that is kind of in the midst of this.
Okay, so then understanding you're probably the one that's right kind of in off of the access road. Yeah, so this is a bigger parcel, block 55, and I understand that Stallwood's looking at essentially having probably two, because it's such a large lot, having 2 stacked townhouse blocks in that space. And so they don't have a plot plan yet, I'll say, for that one that I've seen in terms of where exactly within that big yellow block where those 2 buildings will go. But I know they are sensitive, and staff obviously have flagged also, there are rear yards through there and then your lot as well. So I think in looking at where to place the stacked townhouse buildings on the lot, they would be sensitive to setbacks to those rear yards for existing neighbors. Like I said, there's a good amount of space on that block, so
Okay.
we're providing adequate setbacks to there. And what would happen, it would be like the parking driveway area would be on the west side, so towards that blue block, if you're looking at the presentation. And so it would be kind of just rear yards, grassed, kind of greenscape, landscaped open space that would kind of border the residential lots, including yours to the north there.
Okay.
Thank you both. Do you have any other questions, Ms. Spagnola?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Are there anyone else present who has a question or comment with regard to the amendments, proposed amendments? Thank you. Members of council, questions or comments? Councillor McCausland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, just to kind of echo what Ms. Richardson said. I didn't see any parkland designated in this. I know it was in cash, but I just kind of wanted to see that kind of come to the plan for a park for the little kids to play in.
Could you make sure you draw your microphone close? Some folks are having trouble hearing you.
Repeat.
I think the question was to reiterate Mrs. Richardson's question about cash in lieu of parkland. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Warren because I suspect that was already captured in the original discussions when we created this plan of subdivision. Go ahead, Mr. Warren.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, is the answer to that. The fact that the subdivision doesn't really have a park block on it was already dealt with through the previous approvals of it. And I think that was probably helped by the fact that there's significant green space, environmentally protected space to the south and to the east. And that to follow the master plan we have for parks and get a 1 hectare park would be 25% of or 20% of the entire lot. So in this instance, the recommendation back in 2024 was to take the cash in lieu of parkland for this particular development and to use that money for resources in other parks.
Thank you both. Councillor Wright?
I've got a few questions regarding the green space that is there, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Warren. Is there any possibility that there's a little bit of space that some sort of play park could be installed in that green space, or is it just going to be left very wooded and treed, which isn't a bad thing in my books either?
Mr. Warren?
Through you, Mr. Chair. They're seeking an amendment to draft approval, so we can put a lot of things back on the table before it comes back
Okay.
for approval. So we could look at if there's space to do that type of thing and work with the proponent and see what we can do.
See if we can
Absolutely.
squeeze something in there. My second question would be directed to yourself. The rear yard setback on the stacked towns, do they remain at 6 meters, or what, are they shortened as well in this proposal?
Thank you. They remain at 6 meters and, yeah, it's not there, but yes, they remain at 6 meters. And I think I guess the thing to keep in mind, so working in different areas, doing different developments, a lot of stacked townhouses are often like 3.5-story stacked townhouses. So they're quite tall, 18 meters tall. These are intended to just be kind of 2-story stacked towns, so not what you might see in some pictures if you're looking at what stacked towns are. So hence the 6-meter setback, because they're still really, and I'll look to Stalwood to correct me, but I think they're still really intended to be essentially like townhouses, and not necessarily like multi-story stacked towns, but yeah. So hence the 6-meter setback, because they're really intended to be much like a typical townhouse you'd see in a normal subdivision.
Okay, thank you. And can I do one more? Could we go back to the slide that shows what the original number of singles and towns and semis were? Yes, thank you. The amended DPS, is that what it says up there? I don't have my
Draft plan.
Yeah, so in this, you're looking to move from 20 to 33 singles. The semi-detached remains the same, and the row houses and stacked row houses are in this weird floaty between 20 to 42.
Yeah.
I have some real concern given the state of the literal nation and the lack of affordable housing, that the flexibility is in this townhouse and stacked townhouse area. So if we go ahead at some point and approve this, you're getting 13 large homes out of it extra. And you could, rest at 20 of the townhouses instead of the 18. We're only getting an extra 2 more of the affordable-ish style houses. What has to happen to make sure that we're getting 42 out instead of the 20?
Thanks for the question through you, Mr. Chair, and I'll say what I am aware of, and then if Mr. Dew from Stallwood wants to add anything about market commentary, he can. So I would say in general, the original approval had like larger lot singles, so like it was less efficient use of land and services and roads and everything else. Like it was a fairly kind of generously sized subdivision. Stallwood's bringing in generally smaller, more compact, more cost-effective lots, and with the singles and semis, that's why you're able to get more lots out of the same amount of land. On the townhouse side, though, really the range is whether or not there's an uptake for like additional residential units. So if you build the townhouse, Stallwood could, if there's an uptake in the market, if a buyer wants, they can add in an additional residential unit in the basement. So that's where you're getting more of the range, is if buyers want to have additional residential units included, then that's where you're more likely to get kind of going from 20 up to 30 or beyond. The reality is, I think there's going to be more than 20 of the additional residential units or of the townhouse types across the board.
So they're really all townhouses, and the flex is whether or not the buyer wants to add an apartment.
Generally, yes, but I would say the block on the west side or on the east side, sorry, the one that's kind of closest to Ontario Street, that one will be the stacked townhouses for sure, partly because of the fact that it's kind of going to be a single block. So more likely to be like a rental form because it's not able to be subdivided into townhouse lots individually. So that will be stacked townhouses for sure. It's the other 3 blocks that you could have some change in terms of just traditional townhouses or a traditional townhouse with like essentially a rental unit inside of it as well.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Mayor. I know that in the past we have, and our staff have been proactive about asking that we have some units pre-built with basement units so that the goal with that is that someone who might not be able to afford to purchase a home with their regular salary would be able to do so if they had the income from a rental unit in their basement. And unfortunately, what has happened in a lot of those situations is that an investor has purchased both units, upstairs and down, and in some cases it was semis with basement units, and so they've purchased all 4 units and operate them as rental, which was not the intention of our policy or approach necessarily. Not that it's bad, but the ownership is more the ideal. And so I'm wondering if there's anything that can be done, and maybe this is a question or a nudge to Anthony. I wonder if there's anything that can be done at the sales level to ensure that we are prioritizing selling to owners rather than investors.
I don't know if Mr. Du wants to tackle that one today.
No pressure, Anthony. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Anthony.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, thank you for your question. That becomes a very complicated situation. And I noticed Councillor Butwell looking at me with a big grin on her face. Our intention is always to sell to individuals. And if I may, Mr. Tao, I'd like to just respond back to Councillor Wright, which is when we brought forward some of these changes, we had looked at building a stack town and potentially exploring different ownership models. And if it's possible, whoever's very clever in moving the slide deck around, the units that we show as a stack town is a product that we've built. Yep, perfect. Thank you. So the gray building on the bottom right on page 6, we have built in Coburg with some significant successes, and our intention would be to bring them to Brighton as a potential sale possibility. So what's termed a stack town ultimately becomes a condo, as Councillor Butwell would know, as ownership would have to be divided not just vertically but also horizontally. But I'm very proud of that product, and we would like to introduce it into Brighton, and that seems to be a good location for that product. But we didn't want to get too huge in terms of the height with the neighboring community. I hope that helps everybody.
That does, Anthony. And I should note that I've seen that property in Coburg. Anthony was nice enough to give me a tour last year, and it is a good product.
Thank you both, or thank you all for that. Councillor Rowley.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to go back to the parkland issue again. Sorry about that. I see that to the western part of the property that is, it's on page 12 of 77 on our iPad, additional lands owned by the applicant. Is there a willingness at some point for maybe part of that to be developed as parkland?
Mr. Tao, noting that your client is nodding his head.
So those lands are currently outside the urban boundary. So it is intended to be a second phase or the next phase to expand. So I think at the time, when we did the first set of approvals, it was right around the time when staff and Brighton were working on the parkland master plan. So there had been kind of that direction. The town's not heading in the direction where we're doing small parkettes. We're trying to avoid those. So this doesn't seem like a great location for it. But there is that opportunity as part of phase 2, as there's more development happening, can maybe support a bigger park. And then the other thing on top of that is, 2 things. Within that kind of water course block, there is a pedestrian kind of path connection. You can't see it really well in this image, but the big green splotch there is intended to be a pedestrian path in there and to have like a little walking trail in that creek corridor. And then that blue, the blue block that's beside the stacked townhouses, it had previously been proposed and continues to be proposed to have a now potentially a road connection to the south to Brighton Meadows subdivision. So to provide greater connectivity, so where there are parks developed, whether here in a future phase or to the south, that it would be walkable and hopefully better access by residents. Yeah.
Thank you both, Councillor McCausland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I just wanted to know how much cash in lieu of the parkland was given.
Mr. Warren, do you have that number off the top of your head?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can confirm that I cannot give that number off the top of my head.
Can you provide us with the percentage value that we would normally request?
Absolutely, that would be 5% of the residential area that we find, and we can look to try and get maybe even a little bit more cash, because there are a few more units now, so we can use an alternative calculation, which we always do, to try and get all we can for the municipality.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Perhaps if we could find that number and provide it in an email to members of council, it would be appreciated. Thank you. Councillor Butwell.
Hello, yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Two questions for you. One, when I was reviewing the report initially, I didn't see it, but then when it was scrolling fast, I did. Wrote a little note. So for the stacked townhouses, which I really love that idea,
Yeah.
I think we do need to go up. Bungalow, things like that. If we have a development, it's just not doing so great. I saw the notation of 1.25 parking spaces per unit. How many bedrooms are in each of those units, or would you guess would be?
I'll look to Anthony if he may know, but off the top of your
Through Mayor to
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I do need you to speak into the microphone. There are people watching on YouTube and Zoom that will need you to.
Apologies. Through you to the councillor, the units are a single bedroom with a den or potential second bedroom, but a single bedroom with a den or office space.
So the 1.25 meets the minimum requirement for a single bedroom unit. Okay, just want to make sure we're not skimping on parking. My second item is more of a commentary than a question, but I'll try to figure out how to squeeze a question out of it.
So you can make a comment.
Okay. Questions, comments, queries. So that walking system that would connect different developments in the future, it is something that I love about an area that I travel and visit a lot in Canada. Different subdivisions connected by these parkland corridors. It really makes a neighborhood feel like a neighborhood. Very pedestrian friendly, very it's a way for families to explore and to kind of to get out, and it's safe because it's off the main roads.
Yeah.
So I would love, I know you don't own that piece of property to the south at this point in time, perhaps, but I really like the idea where you're going with that pathway.
Yeah. So your question. I will say credit to both the staff, pointing at staff, Paul and Ron, both at the first round of this application, were both very enthusiastic about making sure there were multiple connections in all directions. So again, not easily seen kind of on this plan, but there's the pathway connection that would take you to that creek corridor. There's also a pathway connection that's kind of as you go west along Halifax Crescent. There is another pedestrian pathway connection to the south there as well, because between, as you saw in one of the images, there is that kind of big open space EP area, and there is a lot of land that's high and dry that would be suitable for walking trails, et cetera, to make connections and just to give that kind of quasi-passive recreation opportunity. So, and then to the north, again, a road step going north, providing that opportunity in the future too. So yeah, it's good. And I think the Brighton's Parkland Master Plan or Parks and Rec Master Plan also kind of picks up on that. So I think we'll hopefully be able to achieve that here. So.
Thank you both. You have a follow-up?
I do actually have a quick follow-up.
go ahead.
So am I to understand that that connection at the northwest corner that is heading northwards is actually abutting, it will now abut the Sherwood's property?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure the ownership to the north, but yes, yeah. So, and that was something, again, the town wanted to make sure that we're not cutting off properties that may be developed in the future. So not to obligate them, but that there has to be, now's the time to provide the road connection. Maybe it's never made, but if we don't provide it through this subdivision, you know, you can't make it once there's a house there. So,
Okay. So would the idea then be to just build the road right up to it and have a series of bollards there, or?
usually, so engineering staff may be able to speak to that. Usually in my experience, it's just left as kind of an undeveloped, it'll look like an undeveloped parcel on that block. And then if and when there's ever a road connection through there, that connection be made and the road put there. Yeah.
And if a connection is not made, it could then be parceled off and sold as an additional lot.
Yeah, I mean, Brighton would take ownership of that, so it'd be part of the land dedication, so the town would own that. As part of the registration or after the registration of the subdivision, it'd be dedicated to the municipality as part of the road. So, yeah, the town could do what it wished with it.
Okay, and quick follow-up
Go ahead.
then, through you, Mr. Director, would that be the type of lot? Because I'm anticipating the Sherwoods are not interested in selling at any point in the near future. Sure you are. There's, if the price, yeah, everything's for sale. Okay. So if we have a roadway there that at this point in the next 5 years, we're probably not going to plow through your property, I'm guessing, maybe, price is right. Could we make that a green space in the meantime and then just reserve it as a road?
I think that would be entirely up to staff recommendation and council's approval.
Okay, so Mr. Director, maybe we could have a look at that, if you could just put your brain to it.
Will do. I've made note of that.
Thank you all. Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Mayor. With regard to road connections, council did receive an email from a resident concerned about connections to Ontario Street. And I know that we've had conversations around the Horseshoe in the past about wanting to limit connections to Ontario Street. And have actually taken great pains to do so for larger developments. Now, the comment we received by email for this one is that it doesn't even align with Iroquois or Algonquin. And so I'm wondering if Mr. Tao can just explain why they can't get a road that would align with the existing road network for entrance off Ontario Street.
Mr. Tao.
Yeah, understand the question for sure. And Ontario Street is like, there's only so many north-south roads. And, you know, as the town continues to grow, there's more traffic and more pressure on those roads, especially a road that has a lot of individual driveways on it already. And so it's a bit of background. As part of the first application, I believe a traffic brief or traffic study was done that looked at the intersection to make sure that it was safe and appropriately designed. If any improvements were needed, like a turning lane, for example, or signalization. So it wasn't, partly because of just the volume of traffic, the size of the subdivision, and opportunities for other future connections. But the alignment with Iroquois, there's an existing house kind of opposite where that connection would be made. So there's not really an opportunity to make that connection for the subdivision. And I guess the other thing I would just note that maybe it's a bit of solace or not, but again, staff had been trying to keep the doors open to as many possible future connection opportunities as possible. So that blue block is intended to provide a future north-south connection for the subdivision to Brighton Meadows to the south. So I think part of the reason for that is greater connectivity for walking, cycling, etc., but also potentially take some traffic pressure off of Ontario Street as well. So if there is a bit of a north-south there, it would take some of the traffic, kind of both from Brighton Meadows and from this subdivision potentially off of Ontario. So,
Thank you.
Thank you both. Just for staff, I want to circle back to the question of a truck route that Mrs. Richardson brought up. When we did this in another subdivision and it was obeyed, it worked well. I'm not sure in this case how we might do that, but I I would like for staff to turn their minds to that as well, especially given the significant impact that is Ontario Street's going to be seeing this year because of the detour routes. Just make sure council's done, and then I'll go back to the public. Members of council, any further questions or comments? Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. Once again, page 7 of 77 on our iPads here. Going back to Parkland again for a second, could I have a bit of an explanation from staff regarding the middle paragraph? The plan does not provide the opportunity or option for a larger 1 hectare park as recommended by the PRMP, as this would represent close to 1/3 of developable land in the draft plan area, requiring additional financial compensation from the municipality to the developer. Could I have an explanation of why would we be paying the developer?
Through your mayor. Because it basically, it looks at if we get the 1 hectare and that is twice as much as we're entitled to, the municipality would pay the difference. Really? Yeah.
It's not something that we see an awful lot, and I was just curious as to. It's okay, Anthony. I want you to build here, but I don't want to pay you to build here.
Which is precisely why we've gone to the cash and lieu route in this particular subdivision. Yeah.
Precisely.
Yeah, thank you. Any other members of council have any questions or comments? And there, I'll make sure everyone has exhausted their opportunities before we go on. So just FYI. Mrs. Richardson from the gallery.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add about the truck route, Mr. Warren, is that I don't know what they're getting delivered down there, but there's semis coming down there too, and we're getting hung up on the pole at the intersection of Raglan and Cedar. So like they're huge, so they go down, so hopefully they have to come back. And I haven't seen anything today about we do those speed markers down the don't semi fit through those. I'm not sure.
They're pretty flexible.
Yeah, I know. They just bounce down and
They will.
bounce back up. Yeah. Pardon?
I said they do fit if they're paying attention. Yeah.
You're welcome. Any other questions for members of the gallery? Or online, the online gallery? Councillor Rowley.
Just want to make a comment to Mrs. Richardson. Am I allowed to for 1 second?
As long as you're entirely polite, yes.
Okay. I'm always polite. I think all the residents of Brighton need to know we need to all be patient this summer. Transports are going to be in places they shouldn't be. And so are cars and trucks are in wrong lanes. I've experienced it myself, but progress is being made on Prince Edward. It's going to be a tough summer, but we'll get through it. They're probably mixed up. GPSs aren't always accurate, right? They probably need to get to Loyalist. And there are signs on Ontario as to access Butler. But I've seen a few curious traffic issues myself, but be patient. We're going to get there.
This is the breaking of the eggs portion of our omelet. We are getting there, though. Any other questions for members of the gallery? Members of council? Mr. Warren, do you have any final comments?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will say that post printing of the agenda, we did receive an email from Lower Trent Conservation providing some preliminary comments, which are substantially the same as what are provided in the staff report, just regarding the need for another technical look at the buffers associated with the wetlands to the south of the subject lands, just so everyone's aware.
Thank you for that. So just for everyone's information, the motion is to accept the report and to ask staff to come back with a final report, having all the information tonight being and other information being considered. So we will see this. Council will see this back at some point in the future. It's moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Betwell. The council receives this report regarding applications for draft plan and zoning bylaw amendments for the Westgate draft plan of subdivision, municipally known as 114B Ontario Street, for purposes of receiving information and public consultation, and that after receiving comments from the public commenting agencies and municipal staff, that a staff report is brought back for council's consideration regarding the proposed draft plan and zoning bylaw amendments. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? The motion is carried. That concludes our statutory public meeting with a motion moved by Councillor McCausland, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council move out of the statutory public meeting at 7:23 p.m. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. And that takes us to planning and development reports on our agenda. Our first report is parking bylaw review, public consultation results, bylaw enforcement officer Shepherd. We've read your report. Do you have anything to add?
Got it. Through you, Mayor. I just wanted to add, on Friday, we received an email from the deputy clerk just identifying that the accessibility committee had some interest in providing comments and wanted to review the parking bylaw draft. So I just wanted to put it out there that the draft doesn't exist right now. I haven't started it, but I will do my absolute best to be proactive in circulating the parking bylaw draft to any and all departments and committees that have a vested interest in it to make sure that everybody gets a chance to see it.
Thank you for that. I have a motion moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor McCausland. The council directs staff to prepare draft options for amendments to the parking bylaw passed on amendments to the parking bylaw passed on public feedback and identified priorities. Based. It's supposed to be based. Thank you. The council directs staff to prepare draft options for amendments to the parking bylaw based on public feedback and identified priorities. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed. Oh, Councillor Reardon, did you have a comment?
Only a comment just to say thank you to all the residents who participated in this. We can't make good informed decisions without your input. So thank you to staff for getting out there and talking to the public, and thanks to everyone who contributed.
Thank you, Councillor Wielden. Any further discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion is carried. Next staff report was with regard to Hamilton Woods subdivision, extension of draft approval. Manager Warren, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Through you, Mr. Chair, nothing further at this moment.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor McCausland, that council resolves to grant a 3-year extension of draft plan approval for the Hamilton Woods subdivision east and west, and further that the revised lapsing date for the draft plan approval be June 12th, 2026 for Phase 5 Hamilton Woods subdivision, and further that the manager of approvals be authorized to give written notice of extension to the applicant and pertinent departments and agencies. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion is carried. Next report is with regard to amendment to the administrative monetary penalties bylaw number 070/2023, bylaw enforcement officer Shepherd. We've read this report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Through you, Mayor, I do not have anything to add at this time.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor McCausland, seconded by Councillor Wright, that council enact the amending bylaw, being a bylaw to amend AMP's bylaw number 070/2023 to replace Schedule A in its entirety. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. The next report is with regard to official plan 5-year review. Planner Whiteman, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, nothing at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council direct staff to utilize the public survey results to inform the ongoing official plan and zoning bylaw review, And the council directs staff to engage with a community engagement panel and interest groups in Brighton. Is there any discussion? Councillor Wheeldon.
Thank you, Mayor. Once again, thanks to everyone who participated in this. Over 400 responses is fantastic. That's only 3% of our population, but it's difficult to get so many responses. So good work to the team and good work to residents who contributed. I was really excited to read this report, honestly, because there were two major themes that came out in it, and one of them was a category of themes that are the same everywhere. There's a general concern that development and change happens too fast, which is, that's just how change happens. So we can all relate to that. And also a general sense of maybe some distrust in the people driving that change, and that's perceived to be developers. But also the other major category, much larger category of themes that I saw were all themes that we've been talking about and promoting throughout this entire term of council, which has been a desire for more affordable housing, a desire to preserve farmland and green space, and this sense of building up and not out. And I sometimes worry that we sound like broken records, but to hear that echoed back to us from the public is really reassuring and encouraging. So thank you all for that.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeldon. I actually can't imagine that there isn't a staff report you're not excited to read. Is there any further discussion from members of council? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Next report is with regard to Archaeological Assessment Phase 3 Land Bank Lands. Director Walsh, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
No further information, Mayor.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Butwell, seconded by Councillor McCausland, that council direct staff to retain Ground Truth Archaeology Limited for the purposes of completing an archaeological assessment stage 3 study in 2026 at a cost of $69,359 to be funded through the contingency reserve and restored through future revenues of the land bank program. Is there any discussion? Councillor Wright.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Director Walsh. Is there any risk with this that we would not be able to develop at some point these lands?
Director?
I think Councillor Wright. I don't think so, no. Depending on the results of stage 3, they may have to do a stage 4. And stage 4 is really two approaches, whether you zone that spot and put a fence around it so nothing disturbs it, or more likely, based on what they're finding so far, is that it would just be a more detailed inventory of what they find. Which, so at this stage, at a stage 4 rather, it's a data collection stage. They want to know. I'm told that this part of Ontario doesn't have a lot of research done through these archaeological assessment stages 3 and 4, and the ministry's objective is just to have sufficient data to understand pre-European activities, and that's what they are really looking for. It's not really a preservation undertaking. And Nick Gromoff, the local fellow, actually originally out of Trenton, he does have some. He did offer to bring in some of the findings, like some of the indicators that he's been finding so far. So, if council concurs with the report, then in follow up, he will bring in those things for display.
Look forward to that. Councillor Wright, follow up.
Yeah, I would love to see that stuff. I saw the Brown Betty teapot thing and I got excited just envisioning some woman throwing her Brown Betty teapot at her husband. That's where my brain went.
So in the same respect as I'm not surprised by Councillor Wheeldon's comment, there it is. Please, Councillor Butwell.
Judging by the age, it was probably not her throwing at him, but him smashing it on her. Yeah, that's
Again, unsurprised.
Yeah.
Any further questions from members of council? All in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Wheeldon.
Sorry. This is a question. Is there any chance of this causing any delay in our design and development of these lands?
Director? To Councillor Whelan, I don't think so. No, this stage 3 can be done fairly quickly, but the idea is to work around the planting season. And the tenant farmers want to get on the field when things are dry enough. So there was a narrow window to do that now or late fall. And then not knowing, of course, what the fall season will bring or the next season will bring. So in my opinion, it's best to get it done now so we don't have these time sensitivities when we do get the plan moving forward. But for the plan itself, I don't think so.
Thank you.
Councillor Butwell.
You just tweaked my memory on something. So there's a contract in place then for this year with the tenant farmer?
That's correct.
That's correct. So the last time that we spoke about that, it was for the 2025 growing season. That came before this council, I believe, in early 2025. And I believe you were going to come back with a 2026 agreement that reflected the current rates.
Director?
I'll look into the last agreement and see what the timeline was on that. I know you were interested in some of the rates at that point. I did go back and look at some of those numbers, and my understanding was they were kind of pretty much a market rate, but it's and to be honest with you, from the landowners I know with farmers managing the land per se, those landowners are kind of just happy somebody's there taking care of the property and keeping it in agricultural production as opposed to going into weeds. But I did take the rate that was in place at the time just prior to our purchase.
Yeah, just as a quick follow-up. So the rate that they received in 2025 was the historical rate. But I believe under the Municipal Act, the municipality has an obligation if they're renting out their lands that it's done at market rates. And the rate that they had been charged was significantly less than what the market rate was locally.
So can we make sure a report gets before council with that information? Thank you. Yep. Anything further from members of council on the motion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. We have no items for information purposes listed. We have nothing under unfinished business, which brings us to bylaws. The first bylaw is an amendment to the administrative monetary penalty system. It's moved by Councillor McCausland, seconded by Councillor Wright. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to amend AMP's bylaw number 070/2023, being a bylaw to implement an administrative monetary penalty system in the municipality of Brighton. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. That brings us to question period. If there's anyone in the gallery or online, no one online except Councillor Whelan. If there's anyone in the gallery who has a question with anything that appeared on tonight's agenda, you may step forward. There's none noted. And our confirmatory bylaw is moved by Councillor McCausland, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton planning meeting held on May 11th, 2026. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. And finally, a motion moved by Councillor McCausland, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson, that the May 11th, 2026 council planning meeting adjourn at 7:37 p.m. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. Our meeting